Welcome back. Bienvenidos, boas-vindas. We're so happy that you were able to join us throughout the session to 1, 2, 3, 5. If you joined all of them, thank you so much. And welcome to the very last one. Entonces, para empezar, voy a hacer lo mismo que hice en la sesión de apertura. Empezamos hablando que este es un evento trilingüe. Entonces, estoy ahí empezando a hablar en espanhol, mas também posso falar inglês e em português, que esse é um evento trilingüe, e a gente vai ter disponível interpretação. Tendremos como interpretación para español y portugués en esa sesión que está en inglés. Además, danos unos minutitos más que van a tener como el icono de globo ahí para que puedan elegir en qué idioma quieren escuchar. So we are going to make it available. You can just click on the little globe for you to choose the language you want to hear the conversation on. Y hablando de participación, durante todo el evento tuvimos como encuestas de evaluación y vamos a tener una también para el evento como un todo. Entonces, después de que cerramos aquí, ustedes van a recibir un email con la información para que hagan una evaluación de todo. Então, assim como a gente teve pesquisas de opinião durante todas as sessões, estou perdendo a minha língua principal. A gente também vai ter uma do evento todo e vocês vão receber via e-mail e junto com ela também o certificado. E junto com a encuesta tendremos também el certificado de participação. Así que, seguimos. Let's start with something that a comms person has to do, which is tell you how to stay connected after this. So we're able to share and learn and connect with people from all over the region and all over the world. But how do we keep these conversations going? How do we keep making things better throughout our region and connecting more people into the generosity and the work? So here we have three ways. Although in Giving Tuesday in general and in the generosity kind of community, you have many of them. But we are sharing with you our website, which has a lot of data work about generosity in our region, also has ways to stay connected, how to find the closest Giving Tuesday national movement very close to you, how to start one if your country doesn't have one. So please take a look at it. It also has a very new look. So if you check it now, you may be one of the first people to see the new look of the LAC Hub website page. Other than that, we have a monthly newsletter where we share generosity events, opportunities, data, opinions from our leaders from the region as well. And lastly, our Instagram, where many of you may have found this event. Keep us following there. We will continue to share resources and spread the word about generosity in the region and in the world. Lastly, some of you may have been part of a different session today, which was Mobilizando Generosidade or Mobilizando Generosidade, because I heard it was a bilingual Portuñol session. So this is a course that Giving Tuesday LAC and Change the Game from the Andina region in Brazil created to give these grassroots organizations even more ways to mobilize generosity in their communities. You can find all the details and how to register on the link or on the QR code. And we're super excited that we launched this course today, and you may be even the first few people to register if you are fast enough. Although some people from the session where it was presented may have already completed the form. Let's see after the call. But those were the resources we wanted to share with you. Once again, I get the logistic part. So I know you guys want to hear what comes next. So I'm happy to introduce JP, Asha, Valeria, and everyone later on to talk about what we came for in this session. But first, JP has a few thank yous to share, right, JP?
Yes, and Julia, I think you need to. Can you turn on the interpretations so everybody can hear in Portuguese and Spanish? I haven't been able to do
I'll
it.
have to do the whole thing again in all three languages. Just kidding. I'll stop sharing to be able to make it available for all you guys. But please, JP, move on to talking about thank yous.
Sure. Just a second here. Well, I see we can see everybody. Well, it's been almost 5 very interesting and busy hours for all of us, and I won't take much of your time because we have two amazing guests to share and reflect a little bit more about generosity and how we are building a regional, how we are building a Latin American Caribbean region more and more generous despite everything that has been happening around the world, all of the changes, and most recently, all of uh, the what how nature has been impacting our communities as well. We've seen that more and more. Today, in 5 hours, as Julia was saying, we launched a new website. We launched a partnership with Philanthropy together to promote more círculos de dar, giving circles, círculos de generosidade in Latin America and the Caribbean. And you soon will have access to a toolkit in Spanish about it. And we have just launched a course in partnership with Change the Game, Podium, SESI to promote local resource mobilization in our communities in Spanish and in Portuguese. We are doing a lot. We heard about data in the first session. We have online giving report, online giving radar. We have a lot happening in Latin America and the Caribbean. We wouldn't be able to do that much without the strong support we have from our team, our headquarters, Asha, and all of the global team as well. But partners like Myriad USA, who was very happy to support us to make this event happen today, and all of the 23, 24 outreach partners that joined Giving Tuesday LAC in promoting generosity without borders, generosidade sin fronteiras. I won't be mentioning all of them for you. It's not the case. I want just to highlight Tinker Foundation. Tinker Foundation has been with us since last year. You might remember they hosted a roundtable on donors and support the donors are giving to local organizations. But all of the 42, 43, they are all great allies we have in Latin America and the Caribbean, and we're very thankful for all of you. Together with all of our speakers and almost 1,000 participants throughout all of the 5 days that we had, sorry, the 5 hours that we had today in Generosity Without Borders. I'm very thankful that in Latin America and the Caribbean, I know this is true for all of the world, but in Latin America and the Caribbean, we don't build the change without working in partnership with our friends and our peers. Generosity, generosidade is becoming stronger each time every minute, each minute we talk, and it happens in the region because we have good friends, because everybody is committed to the same cause of making a Latin American Caribbean region better for each one of us. So thank you for being here with us, and back to Anita to follow up in this session.
Thank you so much. I share that enthusiasm. It's a wonderful morning or afternoon, depending where you are. And it's great that we're going to be able to round up this conversation with Asha and Valeria. If you don't know, if you haven't heard who Asha and Valeria are, let me give you a quick introduction. Asha is CEO of Giving Tuesday, but much more than our executive director. She's a co-founder. She's seen and guided this movement from the very beginning up until now. And Ash, I know you're a modest person, but you really are a guiding light on a global scale in terms of what generosity is, why it's important, and how it intersects with all of the things that we do in social impact. So thank you so much for making the time to join us. Valeria is Executive Director of Avena Foundation. Avena is one of the leading philanthropic organizations working across Latin America. I think, Valeria, I'm right in saying for over 30 years. And I know that you in that time have also been, not in the last 30 years, I don't want to date your career, but I know that you come to this with a really strong commitment to human rights and a really strong understanding of the ecosystem of philanthropy in Latin America. And when we put together this conversation, we titled it Abundance Over Scarcity, because we're coming from a period in Latin America and the Caribbean where so many things have seemed to be negative. There's a little bit of pessimism still hanging around about, where things are going and where we can take them. We have, closing civic space, rising authoritarianism, on top of the age-old troubles of huge inequity and violence and insecurity. And we thought, with that backdrop, what can we bring and what can philanthropy do? And so many people have been framing things as like a separation or divide between the work of institutional philanthropy and major donors and big philanthropy. Giving Tuesday is well known for being about individual giving, generosity, and all of its manifestations. And we thought this would be the ideal space to see if we can find the abundance in those two things and really work out how those two worlds can come together to create something bigger and better. And that will really help us unleash generosity as this powerful force for change in the region. So, with that set up, and for everyone listening, the format that we're going to choose is let Asha and then Valeria each have a couple of minutes to share their thoughts on that topic. We'll bring in a little bit of conversation and then we'll have space at the end for some questions from the audience. Does that sound good to everyone? Brilliant. Asha, then over to you first of all. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Anita. And it's really an honor to be here with you guys. I have been traveling to meet Giving Tuesday leaders and see Giving Tuesday movements around the world for almost 15 years now, which is hard to believe. And JP and Anita are two of the first leaders that I met all those years ago. In all of that travel, I've learned so much about giving, obviously, and the ways in which it is universal, the same everywhere, and all the ways that it is different in different places and specific to region. But one thing that has come up nearly everywhere that I've been is that generosity shows up in places we often don't think to measure it or even to count it as generosity. So neighbors caring for neighbors or small acts of help or kindness towards strangers. Those small acts are the ones that grow trust and belonging between people and shape the daily experience of living in a community. I remember one Giving Tuesday leader telling me that where she lives, no one eats alone. No one goes hungry and no one eats alone. She told me this during the pandemic. People eat communally. So it's both an act of community and a guarantee that everyone is taken care of. That's a form of everyday generosity. It's an expression of our shared humanity, but it doesn't show up in a donation report. And even if your interest really is only in donations, it is a huge benefit to learn what inspires people in all of those other ways as well. So I think that's the kind of story we need to tell right now, because for a long time, so many regions across the world have been told a story about their own generosity, a story that didn't come from them. And these stories are about who we are as people. And given the circumstances that Anita just mentioned that have come up other times today and are coming up every day, those are so critical right now, given the challenges that the social sector is facing all over the world. We see this as the beginning of a new chapter. So a lot of concerning things and challenging things are happening, but our job is to look forward and see what flowers we might plant in this newly fertile ground. Hopefully, this chapter surfaces what we should have been focused on all along, which is our own cultures of giving, our own creativity, and our own capacity to fund social impact from within our own regions. And of course, in collaboration, partnership, and friendship with leaders around the world. Across Latin America and the Caribbean, we heard earlier from the CAF data that many people give directly to another person, to a family in need, more than give to charities or religious organizations combined. So the generosity is there. And just like everywhere, there's also a lot of work to be done. It's worth noting, I think, that the wealthiest countries in the region give less than 1% of income, while places like Honduras, El Salvador, Dominican Republic give more than double that. And that's really true everywhere. Prosperity or wealth doesn't predict generosity, and it never has. People tend to actually give more who earn less. So Latin America and the Caribbean need their own philanthropy narrative, not one imported from elsewhere, and not one that's about institutional philanthropy versus grassroots or individual giving versus high net wealth philanthropy. We need to think about every source of funding and see not only that each one has a very specific role, but that when they work together strategically, there's a huge amount of co-learning that happens. And it takes imagination and real conversations and doing the hard work of real collaboration and transparent sharing, which my experiences in the sector all over the world, is not what we're taught to prioritize. So it takes a really special, really mindful intention to do that. We've seen Giving Tuesday leaders from this region and from all over the world do that for years, because Giving Tuesday leaders, to me, really embody abundance mindset. When Giving Tuesday leaders from 12 countries across LAC came together in Bogota this year, they wrote their own generosity manifesto. And it states plainly that communities in this region have historically sustained one another, sometimes more effectively than institutions themselves. And we know that that's true in other places in the world as well. So it calls for a bigger definition of giving, a culture where everyone has something to give and is celebrated and uplifted for that, and that every action counts, every action of time and care and talent and money. And it commits to turning a day, Giving Tuesday, into a movement, strengthening the ecosystem for not just around the year, but really for the long term, putting people and communities at the heart of change so more people can become the most generous version of themselves, both within and without the sector. It might seem like generosity is separate from democracy and civic space, but it isn't. And in fact, I'd go so far as to say that the splitting of those things into separate narratives is actually quite harmful, and that they are very deeply interconnected. So mobilizing even small everyday acts of giving isn't just about resourcing change, but it's about creating more and deeper and richer participation. And participation is, at least for us, the real North Star. It is the heart of healthy democracies and social well-being. And our own data work really bears this out. People who volunteer or advocate score meaningfully higher on trust and community belonging. Young people who spend more time in person with members of their communities are far more likely to believe in their own ability to solve problems with others, and more likely to believe that democracy is working for them. So this is exactly where organizations like Avena are already leading. They're funding civic space directly because they understand that generosity and civic participation are exercising the same muscle. And that's the kind of co-investment this moment really calls for. So abundance, which is our theme today, is not just about finding more resources. It's a mindset shift as well. It's about finally seeing the resources and the relationships, the creativity, the everyday giving that were here all along, and then building the infrastructure to connect them so that we really move from a spike of giving to generosity that endures over the long term, and having the infrastructure and trust and belonging to ensure that it does. So I'm looking forward to exploring this more with Valeria and Anita, and thank you very much.
Wonderful. I've already written down some key quotes there. Thank you, Asha. Valeria, over to you.
No, thank you very much for the space, and thank you, Giving Tuesday and partners, for creating this space for confluence of ideas and actions. I think that we are hearing a lot of this, the need of really rethinking and really reimagining the way we are giving and we are understanding generosity. So I think that that's really important. So, but perhaps for me, what I don't want to try to summarize what we heard, although I'm going to be very repetitive with Asha and concurrent, and because there are three big ideas that resonated to me through this 5 hours. And the first one is abundance, as you said. No, it's abundance, connection, and participation. So as Anita said, like, we are living in that moment of scarcity, and it's real. Resources are contracting, and civil space is under pressure. And organizations and communities are being asked to respond more uncertainty with fewer resources. And that's a reality, and we should not minimize that. But we also need to be careful, and as Asha said, with that, we should not allow scarcity to become the only story we tell about ourselves and about the future we want to build. Because in Latin America is a region with extraordinary abundance. We always say that abundance of knowledge, relationships, creativity, solidarity, leadership, communities that organize, care for one another, share resources, and imagine solutions. We just thought this when a crisis like the earthquakes come, people come and gather, they move and resource every type of resources that they can pull in. And we have seen it as in Avina, and when we work with our partners, a true mindset of abundance. So when we think about Mapiomas, a collaborative network that combines satellite technology, scientific expertise, and local knowledge to produce open environmental data and maps, what began with a group of organizations bringing together science, technology, local knowledge, and trusted relationship has grown into a collaborative network for more than 250 organizations and more than 75 individual scientists across 17 countries in the global south. Together, they have generated shared environment intelligence that help protect forests, manage natural resources, and inform better decisions, producing information that none of them could have created alone. For me, that's abundance. Not abundance because one institution has everything it needs, but because when we connect that we have new possibilities can emerge. And that's why imagination matters. In difficult times, imagination is not a luxury. It is part of how we construct the future. So if we want a different future, we have to become much more better at imagining and inventing what the future requires. And this is also why Latin America needs its own narrative, as also Asha said, of generosity. No, not one that creates a false choice between institutional philanthropy and community giving. We need convergence. And we have said that for a long time, but we really need to act really intentional on that type of convergence and really acknowledge that there are different forms of generosity, recognizing what each other can contribute and strengthen one another. So that brings me to the second point, that is connection. When we often speak about the resilience of civil society, we think about survival, and that's a very low ambition. So we really think to aspire for a civic space with vitality to imagine, organize, and shape what comes next. And vitality doesn't come from making every organization individual stronger. It comes from strengthening the connective tissue between us. Our recent work with RASI gives us another indication of this. In a study of 73 collective civil society spaces across 34 countries, 2/3 experienced budget cuts, but yet one of their most common responses was not to retreat into themselves. It was to seek stronger alliances, networks, and collective spaces. So really finding those spaces to reinvent themselves, rethink themselves, really reorganize, and they are doing it. So they're not waiting for other external institutions to save them, but they are really creating and fostering those convergence. So when we think about connective tissue, sometimes we treat it as a secondary issue, but we shouldn't. It's, as we said, it's infrastructure that allows knowledge, resources, and ideas to travel. And when disruption comes, resilience does not sit within one organization, it leads across the ecosystem. We have seen this also in our work through Mara Yo Resiliente, that initiative that brings together local organization, regional funds, institutional philanthropy, and climate finance across around a shared commitment to territory, future, and its communities. So what makes it powerful is not simply the flow of resources, but the recognition that each actor contributes something different. Local organizations bring knowledge, legitimacy, and trusted relationships. Regional institutions contribute to proximity and long-term commitment. And philanthropists and climate finance partners provide flexible capital, reach, and risk-taking capacity. So that's also a way of how philanthropy has found itself to convergence themselves, really recognizing the contribution of each other and what would be really thinking about much more a shared capacity and a solution that's rooted in the realities of the community we seek to serve. And finally, participation and power, because generosity is never about only money. The way resources move also influence who participates, whose expertise counts, who establishes priorities, and who gets to decide. So funding architectures also help us blend power. And this is where generosity became deeply connected to democracy, as we have heard. Democracy is, of course, about institution, rights, and election. But for me, democracy is also a living thing. It's how we organize our social practices. It's creating multiple ways to people to be heard, to be engaged, to reconnect across difference, to deliberate, to contribute to the decision about the common good. So this is something that we have learned through our work on inclusive recycling. So when waste pickers organizations are not simply beneficiaries of an initiative, but actors with voice in its governance, something fundamentally different happens. The participation moves from consultation to agency, and generosity can do the same. When someone contributes money, time, knowledge, relationships, care, or voice to a common purpose, they're not simply giving, they're participating. And they're saying, I have something to contribute to the future we are building together. And that practice of participation builds a relationship and trust that healthy democracy requires. So for me, is a matter of no, the question is not how larger we mobilize or how much we mobilize generosity, but how do we create those conditions that people can experience that their contribution matters and their own voice and decisions has power. So that give us and leave us an invitation to recognize that abundance is already exists in the region, that we should invest in connective tissues that allow this to flourish, that we have to fund imagination and vitality, and understanding generosity as an invitation to participate. And I think that as we build this together, we can recognize that the important way forward is to really build on relationship and communities, on knowledge and the capacity to act together. And that's how we get much more strengthened ecosystem for the years to come. Thank you.
Wonderful. My goodness, this has taken on a very high level, this conversation with so many big ideas being thrown in, from the need for imagination, the need for the connective tissue, this idea that both Ash and Valerie have shared about being giving as participation, and participation is expressed through giving. It seems to me that we're very much on the same page and probably very like-minded with most of the people in the audience. But when we leave this safe space of generosity without borders, we're going to come across people who are very skeptical about these ideas. So maybe my first question for both of you would be, if we are sitting, across a table or in a space with somebody who is the leader of a grant-making foundation or somebody who has resources to share, and from a more institutional foundation point of view, or on the other hand, if we are facing someone who is grounded in movements and activism and is highly skeptical about the role of institutional philanthropy, what could we say to them to make them realize that there's a real urgency and need for these worlds to come together? I'm asking you basically to synthesize, if you can, these arguments so that we can take them out of here and use them in our own spaces and communities. Who would like to go first?
Valeria, please.
Yeah, I can go first. I think that for me, the question is like, how do we sit together and reimagine that future that we want to mobilize toward? So it's like, then from that starting point, it's like, it can be from really thinking about communities that do not have access to water, or that they're in a reconstruction phase because of an earthquake. It's like, how then, if we create that common vision, what is our role as different institutions in that creation of that common vision? And how do we can materialize? So as we said, it's a converging conversation, and it's about like how much we put in, not how much money we put in, but what type of much more holistic way of thinking resources in order to create that future that we all want to see. So I think it's a much more that type of conversation, and for skepticals, because I'm sure that there are skepticals, I think that there are, and I'm sure I was in some of the sessions, there are examples that have been placed together, like being well positioned, and to see when institutional giving, community foundations, individual givings come together and really frame what it's needed and how we can support a community, an initiative, a project, and infrastructure. And I think that that's sort of much more about how do we move minds and interests and make that convergence argument.
I would echo all of that, absolutely. And I don't want to be repetitive. I think that it bears mentioning that the nonprofit sector or the social sector can be an ironic one, or can have contradictory elements, right? We exist literally to make the world abundant in so many different ways, to address gaps and to make sure that people survive and thrive. But within ourselves, within the little bubble of the industry we have created, we often don't bring that mindset, right? We're often and it's totally understandable. We're all operating with too little resource. One resource might be doing well, one stream might be doing well, and another one might be threatened. So it does feel as if we're constantly sort of living with a lot of adrenaline in these careers. And so I completely understand that. It's almost like the scarcity mindset is almost a feature, not a bug, of the way that we have or the way the sector has been built. So I think it's also about changing all of the rest of that context. In the States, at least, it's true that nonprofits are so under-resourced that they can't really embrace every single possible revenue stream. So I think in some cases, I want to, give them the credit of saying maybe they do have that abundant mindset, but they only have enough people to really chase down those big gifts, those major gifts. And then we know that that has all kinds of consequences because that organization is then not building a grassroots giving program that we know will be more sustainable and more resilient over the longer term, but the staff is simply not there to do it. So I think that all of that to say it's even more of an argument to share the workload. I think one of the reasons Giving Tuesday has worked is there's so many people doing the work, right? And we do everything we can to make it easier on each other, not harder on each other. We are here to lighten each other's load. And I think it can be that way in the sector as a whole, that the more we work, the more we divvy up the workload, but also we have to learn the lesson of letting go, right? And of not worrying about how much we own and where the logos go and how our egos are doing and how much credit we get and all of that. So I think all of those changes go into addressing a skeptic of these ideas.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that the first idea that the mindset change, it really begins with each of us here, that we need to leave this space convinced that there is abundance, that there is imagination, and take that commitment with us as we go out of here. And then the idea about sharing the work and maybe putting egos and logos and the institutional, the organizational side of things together and really coming together as people. And as like you said, Valeria, imagining together, listening and having those conversations first of all before we arrive with the concrete proposals. And what do you think the first steps are? Is there like a 1, 2, 3 of an action plan of how we can bring institutional? I know there's not, and Valeria's making a face at me. But what would those first tentative steps that we should be making in the region? We have an audience today of people who work in operational nonprofits, like you said, Asha. Sometimes we want to do more things than we can do because of resources, but we also have people who are from the business sector, from academic center, and people who are working in grant making foundations. So what should those first steps be of building this more integrated philanthropic ecosystem? We had a session with Anthea and Anna Maria earlier on today about designing for philanthropy. So what steps can we make to create that ecosystem where there are more natural ways for more ways of giving to be embraced?
I'll offer one initial step in this. I think this is something that I have been on this journey for 14 years and expect to be on it for quite a while longer, which is just together, all of the sectors that you just mentioned, Anita, academia, business, nonprofits, to really understand the importance of what we're talking about, right? When we talk about generosity infrastructure, when we talk about giving as civic infrastructure, those are not things that are just nice to have. And I think that they have been treated that way in philanthropy, particularly in institutional philanthropy. There's much more interest in funding programs, right, that are splashier, that have the more obvious impact. But the truth is nothing can survive without infrastructure. Nothing, not our bodies, not our buildings, and not our communities, right? And the infrastructure of a healthy community is based on generosity. So one thing I would say is really telling that story loud and proud, because my experience in the sector has been that we're almost a little bit embarrassed that our missions collectively are generosity and generosity infrastructure, because we're tired of being looked at and having people say, I mean, that's, it's nice if people are nice to each other. It's nice if there's a little bit more donations, but no, it's not nice. It is the foundation of a thriving community where any other solutions are possible. So that's one first step that I would offer.
I agree with Asha. Like, I think that the narrative that we are creating, like, well, and here is like you're provoking us, like, how do we make sure that generosity is in relationship with abundance and that mindset, and how do then we really think that that also mindset of abundance and generosity has to do as an invitation of participation and be belonging. I think that in this world at this moment of time, the idea of belonging with your communities, belonging with your neighbors, with belonging, it is crucial to really capture the possibility of what is coming. We don't know what's coming, but the only thing that we know is how to build trust. And I think that when you build that trust and infrastructure, as Sasha was commenting, with trusted relationships that are not created overnight. So really the second recommendation is that we have to be patient. Things do not happen overnight. And I think that what we've learned from some of the more local grassroots organizations, movements, indigenous groups, is that those the mechanisms of generosity that have been created have created also with the understanding they're going to be serving for a long run, and they are not substituting other types of infrastructures. And I think that that's also something that we have to remind ourselves, that it's patience, trust of what had been built, and really rallying together about why it's needed that investment on those different infrastructures. With not necessarily that it's not there as a clear outcome, but that we have to value that the belonging, the trust has a value per se, right? And it has and develops things that we've not maybe imagined at this time, but there are spaces to flourish new ideas. And that's also a valuable thing, because that will allow us to be a much more adaptable when any other crisis comes, because they will come. So I think that that's also another thing that I would share.
Yeah.
Can I add one, Anita?
Of course.
I was going to say, I think one thing that we're going to be seeing that will make us all very happy in the coming years is that young people really understand participation, like from the inside out. Since they have been able to talk or post on social media, they're used to participating, expecting their voices to be heard, right? Because that's, that they're digital natives. And we know from our own data that they are very, very interested in social impact, in justice, in philanthropy. So they will be leading the way, I think, with an abundance mindset, with lots of abundance. And part of our job will be to pave the way for their vision of what comes next.
Yeah, that's a wonderful point. The next generations coming through, and how we can involve and help help them lead us about where we need to go. I think it's a really important lesson. And I was listening to Valeria as well. I was thinking about what we said many times, that this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And in a marathon, you need to look around you and see who's going on the journey with you. And it also makes me think of that old proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, and if you want to go far, go well accompanied. And I think that's what Giving Tuesday and this generosity movement has always been about. It's been about finding the people that can inspire, that can lead, that can connect, that can create this upswell of movement, so that if any of us has to drop out of the race, there are still hundreds and thousands of people taking on that baton and moving that generosity movement forward. It makes a lot of sense.
Beautiful.
Asha, Valeria, I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to say. I'd like to ask in the audience any questions. Please feel free to share in the chat. While we reach the end of this event as well, I also love to ask the question, what is the one thing that has stayed with you from today? If you were able to join us from the whole morning and you've been in several sessions, tell us in the chat in whichever language you prefer, in Español, in Portugués, in English. ¿Con qué te quedas? What is that one thing that stayed with you today? And we'd look forward to reading your comments and ideas there. Asha, Valeria, is there anything that you'd like to ask the audience, or any challenge you'd like to launch as the second edition of Generosity Without Borders? So we have something maybe to report back on when we come around next time.
Well, I mean, it is how many months? Don't make me do the math, but Giving Tuesday itself is on December 1st.
Less than
Wouldn't it
100
be
days.
wonderful, yeah, if some of the folks on this call decided to do something for Giving Tuesday together?
Yeah, that's a beautiful challenge and invitation, because I think that when we see how generosity materializes in concrete actions, it's not about only talking and committing verbally, but like when we put, as in they put say it's skin in the game, uh, in the sense of like how do we I'm going to contribute in a way that makes sense for my community, for the ecosystem, for the organizations, how I'm going to share more the information, the resources, my ideas with others. So hopefully, as you said, we can come and track that and really come together also in other spaces as a community that is not separated by institutional giving, community or individual giving, but like really a whole community that are committed to mobilize more resources to the most needed issues, to the different kinds of organization, movements, individuals that are really concerned about the common good. And that's how I think that our democracies will thrive.
Wonderful. I love that today we've managed in many different sections to weave through this idea of giving us participation as part of our not our responsibility, but also our right and our joy as citizens to create the communities that we live in. And I think these conversations are so timely as so much of what we're facing in Latin America does come down to this uncertainty and fear of where the different political scenarios are taking us. And it's a huge region. There's so many differences, but also there's so many threads and common points of conversation that unite us. So Asha and Valeria, I'm really thankful that you've come and shared your thoughts and ideas with us today. I haven't seen any controversial opinions or any difficult questions shared on the chat. So this is your last chance, anyone in the chat, to share. I've seen some really nice comments about generosity being shared, about the things that the joy of participating that people have taken with them, all of the things that they've learned. We've covered a lot of ground today for sure. So
Amazing.
I will take us into the ending of the session. Asha, Valeria, thank you very much. I'm going to ask JP and Julia to come back on screen as well. And while I do that, I would like
Thank you
to
very much.
remind everybody that we have recordings will be available. So if you didn't get to hear the whole of Asha and Valeria's conversation, you can go back and relive it all, as well as all of the other sessions that will be available on YouTube in a couple of hours from now. Also, we'll be launching a poll at the end of the session. Please do share your honest feedback about what you thought about the event. You can find out all about Giving Tuesday on the website, givingtuesday.org, and on the LAC website, which is givingtuesday.org/LAC. JP, Julia, thank you so much for making this event possible. Thank you for all the hard work behind the scenes. Anything else that you'd like to say, JP, as we close out?
No, well, I always can share a lot, say for long, speak for long, and it's been very busy for all of us, the three of us. This is an amazing team. Julia is the most recent one as part of the Giving Tuesday LAC team. We are very happy to have you here with us as well. The three of us, we've been working hard to put this all together. We hope to see you very soon. There are many activities, many activations, a lot happening from today until Giving Tuesday. We are launching the new edition of LAC in Generosity in November as well. We are very happy to have you all here with us, being part of this movement, this family, this movement for disseminating and strengthening generosity in Latin America and the Caribbean. So thank you for staying with us the 5 hours. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Anita, for the leadership, Julia, Valeria, and Asha. Obrigado a todo mundo.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.